Steve Areno's Italian Eatery is your go-to spot for delicious eats and good vibes. Offering mouth-watering pizzas with all your favorite toppings, pasta dishes that'll make your taste buds dance, killer burgers, and amazing steaks too. Whether you're grabbing a quick bite with friends or enjoying a laid-back dinner with family, Steve Areno's has got you covered. So head over to Chattanooga's North Shore where you can kick back, relax, and let Steve Areno's take care of the cooking. Steve Areno's Italian Eatery is a proud supporter of Cadis.
The Flying Locksmith is your trusted partner in all things security, offering commercial security systems, security cameras, audio and video intercom systems, supply, installation, and commercial-grade door hardware. In need of hands-free hardware to reduce the spread of germs? Worry no more, because the Flying Locksmiths are here to save the day. With fast response times and top-notch service, they'll be sure to keep you safe, secure, and protected in no time. Unlocking peace of mind, one lock at a time. Flying Locksmiths is a proud supporter of alcohol and drug abuse recovery at Cadis. Welcome to Scarred But Smarter podcast, hosted by Jeff Stiles, presented by Cadis, Council for Alcohol and Drug Abuse Services, sharing relatable stories of addiction recovery along with our hearts, our voices, and an abundant amount of love with all of those affected by the disease of addiction. We thank you for allowing us to be a part of your journey. And now, here is your host, Jeff Stiles.
Hi, folks. Welcome back to Scarred But Smarter, the podcast, presented by Cadis, the Council on Alcohol and Drug Abuse Services. I have a very special guest in here today. I'm looking very forward to introducing him and talking to him. Very quickly, though, I want to go to Mary Catherine Gentry and get a plug in for Cadis, the folks who sponsor this and make it all happen. And Mary Catherine, good morning to see you.
Good morning, Jeff. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great to see you.
Very quickly, Cadis is, fill in the blank.
Cadis is a nonprofit alcohol and drug abuse treatment center in Chattanooga. We are so grateful and blessed to receive funding from the federal grants and state grants, but there are lots of things within all of our programs that the grants simply don't cover. So that's where my role comes into play at Cadis. I plan events and meet with some amazing people every day that contribute as a volunteer or with their kind donations to a place that I think is pretty special.
Very special and very needed in this community. And I'll be very blunt. I mean, Cadis needs your help. Any organization like Cadis needs your help. This is a very philanthropic town, but you know what? Every single little organization out there that is working on kind of a charity basis, a nonprofit basis, just with a little bit of government funding, they can always use your help as well. So this is just entertaining information, informative entertainment, as I used to say back in the talk radio days. And we want to tell stories and get good guests in here. But there is still a result that we want to achieve, and that is with some money and volunteer effort and love flowing toward Cadis.
Exactly.
How do they get in touch with you?
Cadis.org to dive deep into our programs, or obviously to make a donation. And you can actually be very specific with your donation and choose the program in which you want that donation to go towards. Our
special guest today, and I'm very, very proud to have him here, is Zach Wamp, former congressman for the Tennessee 3rd Congressional District, and a friend of mine. We go way back, since I started doing talk radio, and he really launched his career as a regional and national politician, and it's been a while since we've seen each other face-to-face, mano-a-mano, and he hasn't changed a bit.
Well, if I had your hair, Jeff, I might have been president of the United States. You know, it's just one of those things. I have changed a lot, but mostly at the top of my head. It's all good. It's great to be here, especially on this topic, something that's near and dear to me and you, sure, and many others. And so the way I look at it, the highs and lows of life really is the depth of your existence. People who just go sort of monotone through life are sort of boring. I have not done it that way. I've done the highs and the lows. And
who wants to be normal?
It's made me who I am, and so I don't mind talking about it.
Yeah, normal people don't ever really. Who do you remember? Who's normal? Nobody. No fun in that. Very quickly, I do want to get into all the various aspects, because you intertwine with Cadis in several different places, and we'll touch on those and recovery in general, and dealing with addiction and substances as a lawmaker. But very quickly, what are you doing now? I mean, just give me a quick catch up. I'm not worried about talking politics the way we used to all the time, but I mean, what are you up to?
So I'm still working hard, but the most endearing title I've ever had in my life is the one I have now, which is Chief. My grandkids call me Chief.
Chief.
And now everybody in my family calls me Chief. And so we're Chief and Cappy. And we just renovated our home after we built it years ago and decided to renovate the house and just move back in it. And it's sort of the compound for the grandkids and the growing family, and obviously 2 adult children in elected office. But I still have a very active business life and consulting. I was involved in a STEM computer science coding platform with the Boynton couple, Sheila and Dane, and we actually sold. And so it was a very successful venture. We're still involved, but it's on a earn-out basis. And then I still have a handful of clients. And then I do some pro-democracy stuff out of D.C. I chair 2 national organizations trying to keep the republic, so to speak, because that was a question, can you keep this republic? And it's very much, frankly, hanging in a balance. So I'm still involved. About a third of my time is with what I call pro-democracy work out of Washington, trying to make Congress work under Article 1 and actually get back to the things that the country expects the Congress to do.
God bless you. Good luck.
I know. It's a big task. But if nobody does it, this whole thing doesn't work. I mean, this Constitution gives so much freedom to people that if they're not responsible and people don't really adhere to some traditions and norms, it doesn't function. And so you have to, the big question is, can we continue to peacefully transfer power with free elections? And that's what we're involved in, because that's a question now and not a guarantee.
I said no politics, but I do have to ask, the same thing I would ask of anybody who has left the institution of the U.S. Congress, House of Representatives, Senate, or anywhere else. Are you glad to be out at this point when you look at what's going on up there? Do you wish you were still there in the mix, or do you just see something that you're glad to have in the rearview mirror at this point?
Selfishly, I'm glad I don't have to go through all the mess, because American politics is really taking a turn south. It's not any fun. And my adult children chose to serve at the local level because that's where it still functions, and it has to. And so that there's a big difference between government at the state and local level and federal level, where it really is frustrating and out of control. And even the people that I still know that are there, that I serve with, they're really, really frustrated and angry most of the time because it doesn't work anymore. And so I miss the people. And when I go back, it's like a reunion. I mean, the elevator operators and the Capitol, you knew this, but I was actually one of those guys that talked to everybody, and I knew everybody by their first name. And so I missed that part of it, but man, it makes me sad in my heart where we're at today in terms of civil government.
Me and you both. And I'll say that Zach's career, certainly more illustrious than mine ever could be, and mine did parallel in time frame and in many different ways. You just brought up another one. Everybody used to call me Jefe, El Jefe, and you know what that means, right? Chief.
Oh, yeah.
It means chief, so there you go.
Yeah,
another common ground.
Yeah.
Now, you got to be proud of your kids too. Just very quickly, I mean, you got Weston Wamp, who's county mayor. Excuse me. Now I'm showing my age by calling him executive, and Cody Wamp, our DA. And golly, I mean, you've got a dynasty going now. You're up there with the Bushes.
I try to stay out of their way. They both have really difficult jobs, and so they're going to have good days and they're going to have bad days. Cody's job is really complicated with on any given day, maybe 1,500 criminal cases and 5,000 sessions court cases pending through the local district attorney's office. And Weston's biggest challenge, frankly, is 11 county commissioners, because, you got to try to keep a majority of them going in the right direction. And
herding cats.
Yeah, that's right. But, that we are, I'm grateful that it honors me that they would be willing to serve. And I think they're both change agents. And frankly, it's time for a new generation. I noticed Mark Kennedy wrote that in yesterday's Times Free Press, that, both mayors are actually like next generation guys.
Yep.
Instead of these people that are hanging on into their late 70s and 80s and want to hold on to power for 50 years. I mean, God bless them, but get out of the way. Make room for new people. I have more confidence in the next generation on solving problems than I do my generation.
I want to jump right into the one of the other things that we shared, of course, and some of my battles. And anybody who listened to me back in the day knows that I had lots of struggles, continuing struggles. I will have them until the day I go into the ground or wherever they put me, with addiction, with substances. I drank way too much, and I put that down a long time ago. I've had a relapse once, and let's hope I'll never have another one. Knock on whatever this stuff is. What is this? Simulated wood, and here it'll work. And but also dallied with every drug you can name, and several you cannot. I was kind of a connoisseur. I'm not going to ever try to pretend otherwise. You had in your youth, and I actually had forgotten this quote, but I went back just real quick just to kind of get my dates right. You said something once that has really stuck with me. You said your fraternity brothers and college friends always knew that you would serve. They just didn't think it would be in Congress.
Yeah.
so a wild youth, I guess, would be the best way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to start, but I do like from time to time to tell my story because it reminds me of how vulnerable I should be, and everyone is this way. More and more people, too, in the world that we live in have some issue. I mean, it's like when people say, oh, but you had an issue. It's like, yeah, every single one of us has an issue. Just whether or not you admit it, whether you really understand it or know it. And there's everything now from gambling to sex to social media. I mean, just whatever you want to get addicted to, it's out there. All you got to do is live, and you're going to. So it's really coming to grips with your own vulnerability. And to me, sobriety, which is now 40 years, 4 months. Actually, this coming Thursday will be 40 years and 4 months.
Congratulations.
So but to me, and this is fascinating because I've had this. I think back knowing I was coming in here on some things that are really provocative, and I'll tell my story if you don't mind because.
Please.
Bush 43 and I had several conversations about the parallels of his life at a different level and my life, because both of us felt like if we didn't go sober, we would lose control of our lives. And he and I talked about that. In fact, one day in 2008, about 2 months before he left office, we got a call, and the House was in session, and I was in Washington, and the call was like this. The president's going to Fort Campbell tomorrow for the day and wants to know if Congressman Wamp wants to spend the day with him. And I mean, even though the House is in session, I'm late in my service. I've been there for whatever at that time, 14 years. And the answer was yes. And so I get to Andrews Air Force Base, and I go on Air Force One. I'm sitting in the back where you normally sit, and the Air Force colonel, who happened to be a female at that time, she came and she said, it's just you and the boss today, so you're up front all day with him. And so I spent the whole day with him, down and back up there talking. And we talked a whole lot about everything from tobacco to alcohol to just different things that are afflictions that can get you if you're not careful, and how we both had this time where we both decided in our heart for different reasons at different times without a massive intervention from others. We just knew we needed to go sober and stay that way. And it's been almost like a fairy tale to me. But what really happened, I was a young kid that was, I would just say, wound up real tight. I mean, I was always going to either be addicted to something positive or negative. And so I think later in life I came to grips with I had that kind of personality, that I was going to be wide open one way or another. So make sure that you had guardrails, make sure that you had support around you. And so, at Macaulay growing up, I was, me and Rob Taylor, who's Julie Taylor's husband in Chattanooga, were probably written up mostly as the guys most likely to succeed, president of the student council, athletes, da.
And there you were.
Yeah. And the two of us, he went one path and I went to University of North Carolina. And instead of playing JV basketball like I was supposed to, I ended up joining a fraternity and drinking too much beer, becoming the social chairman. And the next thing you know, you're partying more than you should be. And, 5.5 years later, I think my parents thought that I might have been having some issues, but I remember my dad sent a guy over to Charlotte, North Carolina to kind of check on me one time. And then I came back here, and anyway, long story short, I ended up drinking too much. And then you get into other things, you get into, trying marijuana and cocaine and everything else. And, by 1984.
And let me jump in. This was during an era where the stigma was nowhere close to being as negative or as pervasive as it became later on, as it is now. I mean, it was everywhere. If you were on campus, it was everywhere. It was like currency.
Well, it's interesting because, I grew up kind of in the middle of the hippie movement. You know, you think about Vietnam and you think about my two brothers and I, and you even think about my mom and dad, who both are in heaven now. But, and this is wild, I'll just tell the truth. My parents smoked marijuana before me and my brothers did. My parents,
it's not a shocker,
smoked marijuana before me and my brothers did, with my cousins, who were already older than us and in college and all. They smoked marijuana with my mom and dad. And so this was that era, like you're saying. And then everything becomes sort of pervasive. It was kind of on the heels of the hippie movement in the country. And I go to UNC, and I start kind of just going wild, and I'd been to an all-boys school, and I was very much protected. And anyway, so, one thing led to another, but I felt like I was kind of losing control of my life. And it got so bad that by 1983 and 84, I'd already in the workplace, I was functioning real well. And I will give credit on intervention to a couple of guys who knew me really well back then, Wayne Kropp and Hicks Armour, who's still great friends of mine. And they did confront me when I was in the Chattanooga JCs, because I would run hot and cold. I would do something really good. I would run a big project, and then all of a sudden I would not show up for a week. And it's like, what's the deal here, man? You're becoming kind of erratic. And Hicks actually told me at one time, which was 2 months before I checked myself in for treatment, he said, "You're the biggest waste of talent I think I've ever seen." He said, "You've got the ability to really, really do great things, or you're going to end up in jail." And he really confronted me like that. And he was mad at me because I didn't show up to finish the Christmas tree project for the Chattanooga JCs. And then what really pushed me maybe 6 weeks later into treatment was on Monday morning, February the 6th, 1984. I had missed my father's birthday 2 days before, on February the 4th, for the second of the last 3 years. I'd missed it 2 years before, then I went to it, and then I missed it again. And I missed it on these weekends where more and more I would disappear on a Friday and show up on a Monday, and I was just gone. I was just partying. Yeah. And so that's when you start feeling like you're losing control of your life. And towards the end of my depths of that existence, which was maybe a 5-year period of downward spiral, I would go to bed praying. I never had the courage to hurt myself, so I would just go to bed praying at 3 or 4 in the morning. God, just take me. Just take me while I'm sleeping.
This woman sitting next to you has described the same thing. I have felt the same thing. The depths of depression that can't be described. I hope you folks out there who have never felt it, never feel it.
Yeah, but anyway, I would pray, Lord, just don't let me wake up. Just don't let me do this again tomorrow. Just don't let me do this again tomorrow. So anyway, it gets to a place where I missed my dad's birthday again, and I just woke up that morning and I'd heard about this place called Valley Psychiatric Hospital, and I just drove straight there. And I showed up and I checked myself in and kind of went through the insurance process of whether or not I qualified or I could. And my parents still didn't know where I was until Tuesday night. And so I'd been there for 36 hours to kind of detox. And Tuesday night I called them and I said, I checked myself in. And they said, What? Really? You got a problem? I mean, because, the codependency thing in a family, especially with your parents, is never going to admit it. Like, oh, you're a social guy. We understand it, but do you really have a problem?
Parents and family almost always the worst enablers for their loved ones.
Yeah. And so I just said, just trust me here. I have to stop. Or I'm not going to make it. I just have to do this. And so by Thursday night, they came to visit. And, and it's supposed to stay 28 days. I stayed like 6 weeks. I stayed extra time because I wanted to. And to me, here's the secret to the whole thing to me. It's a physical, mental, and spiritual balance. And it's a struggle on all three fronts. And if you bring those three, physical, mental, and spiritual health, to the equation, you can stay sober and you can recover. And I totally get it. It's a lifelong thing because it's going to go, into eternity with me. But my success has been constantly focused on all three of those things, because any one of them gets out of balance to me and I'm not going to be healthy. And so, today I'm addicted to walking in the morning. I walked 5 miles this morning. I walk 5 miles almost every single morning of my life. And that's the way I start the day. And I get up early and I go to bed early. And I used to exist in the darkness, and now I exist in the daylight. Like my wife said, once the sun goes down, if I close my eyes sitting there, she says, hopefully not driving, but if the sun's down and I close my eyes, I go to sleep. And then when the sun's up, boom, I'm up. And it's just a complete shift in culture. So it's sort of like the light. I mean, some of my reflections here at almost 67 years old on the whole thing for me is I would never do it again, but I'm really glad it happened.
I was just going to mention one thing. I mentioned the word stigma, and I'm so glad you were able to and willing to tell your story with such openness. And a lot of people are probably not aware of that. I mean, probably don't remember that. But the stigma, I remember very well being new in talk radio, 92. And Marilyn Lloyd had said she was going to step away from her office. And then somebody got into her ear and said, hey, if you stay one more term, you get more money in your benefits package. She goes, hey, I'm going to stick around for one more term. And you were running against her and ran a very, very good campaign and very, very close neck and neck. Within weeks of Election Day, suddenly your mugshot was everywhere from where you'd gotten busted for passing bad checks in college. And I thought that was low. I thought it was a dirty move. It's politics. I get it. But it cost you because people went, oh, wow, that's an image we didn't associate with him. And so you went through this entire process, went through all of this work, got yourself right, but still the past could come back and haunt you. You weren't a known commodity then the way you are now, and we're all throughout the 90s after that. But that had to be a blow. That had to be a real blow to have that used against you.
Well, yes and no. In a sense, I needed that to be used against me to ever have a chance to serve. And so it all depends on the way you look at it, because in a sense, even before that story you're talking about, I knew when Hicks and Wayne, when they first challenged me, and then I changed my life, and then they came back a few years later, and I had a big real estate deal. I closed the downtown Blue Cross sale, which is ironic because that's where the Gateway is now. But I closed that sale. I sold that deal for $5.5 million and made a lot of money for a young guy, and almost got completely out of debt. And we're at this Victory deal down where the restaurant is on the river from that night, and Hicks and Wayne were there with their wives and Corky Coker and others, and they said, you need to run for Congress. And I said, I can't run for Congress. And they said, why? And I said, because just 8 years ago I went through treatment. Yeah, skeletons. I can't do that. And they said, no, I think people will give you a second chance if you're just really open about the whole thing. So on the way home, Kim said, I think they may be right. And that really, I've kidded her many times, said, you're the one who got us into this. She said, no, I'm not. And I said, but you said it was okay. And so we did it. But I knew before I even ran, Jeff, that I needed to tell the story, that I didn't need others to tell it for me. And so I went to the newspaper, and this was back when they had the Times and the Free Press. And I did this big Ed Board interview. And I said, let me just tell you my story, which I just told, basically the same exact story, that I was losing control of my life, and I checked myself into the farm, and I physically, mentally, and spiritually, one day at a time. And oh, by the way, I went to meetings for a year faithfully all the time, basically every day. And then for 3 years, I counseled others as a way to continue to stay in touch with my own challenge.
11th and 12th step.
Yeah. And continued to work on all that. And I'd stayed sober and had 2 young kids and my wife and a family, and all these things came to me after that. And, I can get into the spiritual aspects of it because it's very much a spiritual journey for me, because as I surrendered and submitted, I was empowered. I even believe, Jeff, to this very day, that I came out of treatment and rehabilitation with gifts that I never had going in. I also believe I have this empathy that I never fully had before going through what I went through. I also believe that I have courage that I never had before going through what I went through, because once you've been down and you've lost it and you've given a second chance, you got more courage than you ever had the time before. All these things are a real part of my story. If I would not have gone through this, I would not be who I am today. And the people that follow me, the legacy, would not be who they are today because of this business of humble yourselves. Submit yourselves. Go to your knees. Say, I am not in charge, but I want to be a new person. And once you are more powerful than you've ever been before. So that's my story.
One of the paradoxes of 12-step programs AA is that you have to surrender to win. And I'm here to tell you that every day I pray for the ability to innately, instinctively, and intuitively surrender and accept.
Yeah.
One of the other things that you pointed out is that I know that stung when those two friends told you that. I know that stung when Wayne Kropp told you that. You're going to either end up being president or be dead. But you know what? Having people close to you who no longer sign off on your BS, who don't just sit there and nod in agreement because they don't want to confront you. It's not your job necessarily to always be nice and kind to the people you love. Sometimes you have to actually give them some harsh reality.
Are you looking to bring your commercial project to life? Look no further, because the expert team of Robert Roberts General Contractors specializes in turning your vision into a reality. From concept to completion, Robert Roberts General Contractors handles every detail of your commercial project with precision and care, ensuring that your project is delivered on time and within budget. Robert Roberts General Contractor is a proud supporter of substance abuse recovery at CADIS. Let's dream big and take steps towards creating a community where everyone feels valued, supported, and empowered to reach their full potential. Support those on the path to recovery by donating to CADIS today.
Our guest here at Scarred But Smarter, the CADIS podcast, is former Congressman Zach Wamp. I always have referred to you as Zachariah jokingly. That's not really your name, right? It's just Zachary.
El Jefe.
Yeah, there you go. And Mary Catherine Gentry from CADIS in here with us. And Zach just gave a very, very powerful and emotional, rendition of his own story. And again, a lot of folks out there might not have ever heard it, or maybe knew something of it but never heard the details, and a very powerful one it is at that. Let me tell you something else about Zach and his story, is that he has been an absolute blessing to organizations like CADIS and to people out there in the recovery world for a long time. We had Tommy Farmer, just the other day with the TBI, and they were talking about how things started at the Grundy County Courthouse in the basement.
Yep.
You were part and parcel of that whole organization and that launch too.
Yeah, a woman named Dawn Brothers. I was telling Mary Catherine not long ago up at the Grundy County Herald, I was in my very first term, and she started telling me about methamphetamines and how they'd shown up in the countryside, and it was like the moonshine of our generation, but it was really, really deadly. And of course now we've got fentanyl and the whole terrible downward spiral of all of these type activities where people are dying. But yeah, and so we set up, and I had the ability, once I got a little bit of seniority, to direct some money towards what at that time was called the Southeast Tennessee Meth Task Force, and then it became the Tennessee Meth Task Force, and Farmer ended up going to Nashville and working out of the TBI office to run the statewide task force. But I funded it the first few years to get it going because I knew it was very, very important. So there's multiple aspects of this problem, just like my daughter, Cody Wamp, the district attorney, knows very well, and that is the interdiction in law enforcement to keep the public safe from, the dark side of all this, but then the personal side of how do you give people the ability to restore their lives. I'm real involved now in this organization, which is a prison reentry program called Men of Valor, which the Governor Bill Lee, was part of starting it in Nashville 27 years ago. When I ran for governor in 2009 and 2010, I spent some time with these guys in Nashville and told my story to a bunch of guys that had been, most of these people are in jail for drugs. I mean, and there's just way too many people that have been in jail for drugs. And when they then serve their time and they're ready to re-enter, the recidivism rate can be driven way, 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 way down to less than 15% if they're given the tools and the instruction and the support basis to re-enter the society off drugs, sober, and move themselves into a productive lifestyle. Massive success in Nashville and Knoxville. We're going to try to do the same thing in Chattanooga. I was with them again in Nashville last week. But the Men of Valor is another way for me to stay involved. CADIS is an excellent program. The thing I like about CADIS is it's public. I mean, not everybody had access to Valley Psychiatric Hospital.
No, I was going to mention that was in the era when you had Valley and Greenleaf and other organizations
That's
like
right.
this that were vying for your dollars. Huge ad campaigns on radio and TV and newspaper. They had money and all insurance paid for it. Well, that went away a long time ago, and it's become more difficult. There are people out there longing to get into a program who don't think they can because they've been told at certain levels, no, not going to happen, you don't fit. One of the things I think that CADIS does very well is their outreach program. I didn't mean to interrupt you, though.
No, but without treatment, I don't I would never have been able to get back on the right road. And I know there's a spiritual dimension, a physical, all of these aspects, but they actually show this to you and share this with you and get you the whole 28, the 10-step, 28-day program, 12-step is a successful model, and you follow it and then embrace it in your own heart, and good things can happen. And so I'm all about it. Opportunity, second chances, third, fourth, fifth, sixth chances are hard to accept, but I am a second chance product. And like when those guys said, you need to give the people a chance to give you a second chance. I went and told my story. I'll never forget, I walked in that Ed Board meeting at the Times Free Press, and as I told the whole story, I went all the way into doing cocaine. And so the headline in typical fashion doesn't say Zach went sober. It literally was a front page picture of me sitting there in the interview, and it said, Wamp opens up on drugs.
Yeah.
And so
I'm surprised they didn't say cocaine.
In politics, you're successful based on what's called a fave-unfave, your favorable versus your unfavorable ratio. And so you desire to be 3-to-1, favorable to unfavorable or not. After that, our first poll, after I went out publicly and I said, I'm going to run for Congress and these are the warts and all, this is my life story, sorry, but this is who I am and I'd like to serve, was 1-to-1, one favorable to one unfavorable. About 3 years into my service, after I got elected, and then I got reelected, and in fact, when I ran for reelection, you may remember, against Chuck Jolly,
Sure.
Marilyn Lloyd endorsed me for reelection after I'd run closely, against her.
Yes.
And that stunned the establishment. In fact, the Democrats kind of turned on her and were really mean to her because she did that, but she felt like I deserved a chance and that I had run a reasonably respectful campaign against her. And then I honored her service, and I hired some
Marilyn
of her people.
led with her art.
Yeah, and I kept some of her people and I honored her service, and I really met with her many times to say, how do you do this and how do you do it right? And she liked all that. But anyway, that approval rating went from 1-to-1 to 2-to-1 to 3-to-1 all the way to 6-to-1. And that's when they came up with the adage Wamp Davidians, because we had a following. But the following was a result of people connecting at the heart level. And that's what this is all about, y'all. We all have a heart, we all have to give each other a chance and give each other a break. And every now and then say, well, but there by the grace of God go I, y'all. Come on, quit. Everybody now, and it's like, oh, he's terrible for this or that. We've all got warts. We've got to accept each other, love each other. We're all human. We all need each other. And that's one of the breakdowns of American politics right now, is everybody thinks that the people who don't think like you are the enemy. And the enemy are the people overseas that are trying to destroy our country. And we're just competitors is all we are.
One observation, note, and one admission, confession. I think you put Wamp Davidian completely on me.
Are you the one that labeled us that?
I think it was after I actually moderated a debate between you and Chuck, and you actually came to me afterwards because I'd asked a question about abortion, pro-choice versus pro-life, and somebody in that audience got so upset by the way I phrased it. You came up and said, "Do you want one of my people to walk you to the car?" And I just was looking at this guy, this dark-eyed guy who just looked crazy as hell. Yeah. And it was either me or Bill Lockhart that actually came up with the phrase. And it did stick, didn't it?
I think it went regional. I don't think it made it nationally, but I think it went regional. Wamp Davidian.
For what it's worth.
That's funny.
But the observation, though, is that Americans are a remarkably forgiving sort of people.
Yeah.
The same kind of, I tried to mentally, telepathically communicate with Bill Clinton about the whole Monica Lewinsky thing. Man, just fess up. Mm-hmm. Don't say what the definition of is. Don't say things like I didn't inhale. Just say I did it, forgive me, and you probably would have been in better shape in the long run.
You said you don't want to do too much politics, but these type things evolve into some of it because this is a combination interview here, Jeff. But this whole Trump thing is like, in some ways, a repeat of the Monica Lewinsky thing, because sure. I'll never forget Newt Gingrich saying, we've got him. Now we can impeach him and we'll beat him. Well, none of that happened. In fact, it empowered him.
Yeah.
He became a victim to a lot of people, and so
the character counts.
Yeah, he got reelected, and now they've done the same thing to Trump. I mean, of all the crazy things, you just go a little bit too far at knocking somebody down, and they become a victim, and then they're more empowered. Yeah, and they've martyred Donald Trump now, of all the things. So it's just wild.
I we have to take one more break here, and I want to bring Mary Catherine up, and then we'll have to kind of rush through some accomplishments and some things that I want you to say and give you some room. But you came in to Congress. You came into your position of influence and power. Let's just say it, as it is. When we were having a crack epidemic, and then in the middle you had the crystal meth epidemic. By the time you were leaving, we had the opioid epidemic. Now the fentanyl, of course, which kind of goes hand in hand. Literally, substances, addiction, and the crime that and keep in mind, folks, the status of being an addict is not illegal. It's not against the law to be an addict. It's not against the law to be insane. Yeah. It's the things you do. That's where the illegality comes from. But this has floated next to you like the ghost of Christmas past pretty much from day one. This has had to be something you had to deal with virtually every day of your life at some level.
And I think that is now manifested in both of my kids serving, because they are who they are and have the mindset that they do because of my experience in many ways, because they see both sides of it and they understand that there's a human side of it and there's a law enforcement side of it. And even like with how do you use the opioid money in the county, Weston has to make those decisions right now, but there's no question. And these are all ways to medicate ourselves from other afflictions. We all know that. There's a bunch of deep-rooted causes of all this, and whether you hide yourself in social media as a way to medicate it, or you eat too much, or you get into gambling or sex or whatever, there's plenty of things out there you can do to take your mind off what the deep-seated issues are. But I think more than anything, we just all desire to be loved. And I think if we'd love each other a whole lot more, we'd have a whole lot less addiction.
If you're dreaming of spring gardening weather, visit the Barn Nursery for the best selection of plants to bring on the spring blooms. The Barn Nursery is the South's premier garden center and a proud supporter of alcohol and drug abuse recovery at Cadiz. Discover the elegance and charm of generations past at Brody Jewelers. With a legacy of craftsmanship and quality, Brody Jewelers offers a curated collection of exquisite pieces that tell stories of love and legacy. From vintage heirlooms to modern masterpieces, each piece carries a rich history waiting to be cherished by you. Visit Brody Jewelers today and experience the magic of this family-owned, historical, fine jewelry store, where every piece is a work of art and every customer is family. Brody Jewelers is a proud supporter of Cadiz.
A wonderful way to wrap up that particular segment with Zach Wamp here. Now, Mary Catherine Gentry, get up on the mic here a little bit. We talked just for a second there about the fact that so many people out there, and either they are suffering, they don't know what to do. Family members, co-workers, wives, husbands, sons, daughters, they want to get help for somebody, but they're so scared they just don't have enough insurance. They're just not in that right category. They're going to be seen as unfit, unwashed, whatever, whatever caste you want to put them in, and they're afraid to make the phone call. Please address that for just a second for the good folks at Cadiz.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Zach. I appreciate you being here today. So, if you are someone that is struggling with addiction, or you have a loved one that is, Cadiz is available for you to reach out to for an assessment. If you're from the state of Tennessee, you can contact Cadiz and potentially qualify for a full scholarship to get help, to get treatment. There are people out there that care. There are people that want to help you, and Cadiz is one of them. And we're so grateful to have Cadiz in Chattanooga. We're actually celebrating our 60th anniversary this year.
I was going to ask about that. I thought that was coming up, as a matter of fact.
We are. So we're very excited about that. And I've recently been doing some research on our founding fathers, and a lot of really great folks that did some incredible things to get it started. And over the weekend, it's ironic that Zach is here today because he's one of my heroes as well. But, I read about some pretty great men and women alike from Chattanooga that wanted to help people with addiction and that really focused on starting Cadis. People like Max Bonner and John Bonner and Tom Garrity and Gene Roberts, and these people that I, when I was a little girl, I knew, and now I just love them even more.
I tell them it's being 60 years old. Things don't stick around for 60 years if they don't have some worth. And I'm just going to tell one brief little personal story. In this phone, you can't believe the contacts I have. It's a pretty impressive list of contacts, and I try very hard not to ever bother people, but I did send Zach something last summer. I was out walking in the middle of nowhere with my dogs, and I came across this little bitty, just blacktop bridge, had a couple of guardrails, going over the Sequatchie River, I believe, and there were two little stickers on there, Wamp 96. And I took a picture and sent it to Zach, and I said, man, we're old. And his response was, no, I think we're classic collectibles. We're different. Classic collectibles. I said, that's the way to look at it right there. Zach, all right, with all of the interface that you've had, governmental, community, public, private, all the different, variations on dealing with the problem of substance abuse, use, addiction, recovery, the crime that comes from it, is there anywhere in the country that you have, a connection to that you think is doing it truly right? And I'll say this, when we had Tommy Farmer in here from the TBI, he mentioned the thing, I hear this all the time, you can't arrest your way out of this problem. And that is true. You can't arrest your way out of addiction. But also going the other way, take a look at some of the states and cities that have completely decriminalized things, something that I never really was a huge proponent of. Decriminalization, definitely. But taking dealers and saying it's okay to do that, taking cartels and saying it's okay to do that, never was down with that. Some of those communities have come back and said, this isn't working for us. We need to reverse course on this and do a 180. Is there any community, state, county, any place out there, city, that you think has really just gotten it right?
I don't really know the answer to that question. And in a sense, I'm not sure there's a one-size-fits-all solution. In a sense, my dad used to say there's no textbook on raising kids because every family's different, every kid's different. And in a sense, that may be the way we should approach this because every community's different. When Mary Catherine talks about the founding fathers or the people from Chattanooga who cared enough about this, I think of many, many families off the mountain that had kids that had challenges, and they said, well, this is where I'm going to put my money and my focus, my attention, because this is what I think needs to be done. I think this has to almost be addressed at the local level, the community level, based on your history, your DNA, so to speak, and the family's commitment to this as a challenge. But I don't think you can universalize it because the world in Arizona is a lot different than the world in Massachusetts. It's a lot different than the world in Tennessee. And, just like we're going to have a different attitude towards guns in our state, we're going to have a different attitude towards a certain amount of crime, and you can drive a lot faster in Idaho than you can in New York City and all these different things. So this may be one of those issues that needs to be addressed more localized and at the ground level, so to speak, and not out of Washington. Now I love best practices where you can find. So that's a question that I haven't looked into, but I think it'd be really interesting to see which communities and even which approaches are working the best with people. What really has broken my heart, frankly, is the whole fentanyl piece, because a lot of this is just accidental. Somebody ingests something or gets close to something that kills you, and you don't get a second chance. Yeah. There is no second chance, and that's what breaks my heart because, like you said, I never put anything in my veins. I just put stuff in my nose, but that was back in a day where it wouldn't kill you, But thank God it wouldn't, or I'd be dead. And, second chances are really important, but if you don't get one, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we were talking about the other day also with Tom, and said the fact that parents like your parents, my parents, me as a parent, don't think that the same marijuana that we used in the 70s and 80s is what the kids are getting a hold of today. This is not Willie Nelson's pot anymore, and and the idea of something that was being out there, God knows we put all kinds of things up our nose. The idea that one granule of an alien substance, which is everywhere out there, can make it in there and put you in the ground. It's terrifying. I have to say, I'm actually glad I came up at the time.
I saw a
came
national survey last week that said more people smoke pot regularly than drink alcohol. 20% of the American people surveyed last week said they smoke pot weekly.
My gut reaction would still be pro pot over alcohol personally, but I mean that can be debated highly at any given level.
Depends on what pot you're talking about,
and when you're doing it, and what you're doing
about
when
the
you're
pot
high.
that Tommy Farmer's talking about, probably not. If you're talking about, it's even cigarettes. If you're smoking cigarettes that Thomas Jefferson grew on his farm years ago, there'd be a lot less. It'd be a lot better for
additives and
be
the
a lot
chemicals.
better for you than what they sell commercially today. So
Purposely
a
addictive
lot
stuff.
of it is give us the definition before you make a assessment.
I'm going to throw one kind of odd question at you. That's kind of a trademark of mine. I got to ask at least one surprising question, which is, all right, you mentioned your conversation with W. W had his issues. You had yours. We're looking now, as we record this, Hunter Biden's going to court today because he actually bought a firearm, lied on a federal form while he was under the influence or was still regularly using drugs. The idea that this is that drug addicts and the people who suffer the most are Skid Row folks. They're folks in lower income, urban areas, out in the rural sticks, things of this nature. You got meth in the sticks, you got crack downtown, and all the rest of that stuff. It's everywhere. And I think it would just be a shock to people if you just, could take one of those UV lights, a black light like they use on crime-solving cases, and scan it across the halls of Congress to see who showed up as abusers, users, people who were actually under the influence right then. Powerful people, movers and shakers, influencers, they're subject to, all of them. I was going to get your take on that. Did you actually see enough use and abuse inside the Beltway in D.C. to concern you, that these are the people running this country?
No, I don't think that's as big a problem as just completely being obsessed with themselves and being selfish and not being servants of the people, but being so self-interested. And now we have so many grifters that are there not to serve the public, but to be served themselves or to build lists or to get attention. The currency of American politics is now fame. A lot of people enter politics to be famous because famous to a lot of people. And, Trump's put that on steroids because it really is fame. And, people talk about his money, but he really never was as rich as they thought he was. He was just famous. And once you become really famous, then money just follows that. So they've inverted the whole thing. But, the scripture says money is the root of all evil. And today, fame is sort of the currency of the public, and so those are the dangers because people get eat up with it. But it's really destroying the notion of public service. I stood, Mary Catherine's father, the late Jim Gentry, who was an iconic guy, was one of Bill Brock's best friends. And Bill Brock was an icon to me because he was truly just a public servant. He's a business guy who decided he was going to serve. He didn't even know how to give a speech when he first got into it, and he kind of grew with the whole thing, but he was a public servant, and I inherited that legacy. And I really believe that public service is a noble calling, and I've ingrained that in my children, that you're not there for yourself, you're there to serve the public. And it should, if it's a noble in the future, we got a chance. If it's not, and it's just a bad Jerry Springer show, if that's American politics, people are going to turn it off.
What is your crystal ball take on 24?
Well, it's a race to the bottom. These choices are the worst I could possibly imagine. I don't even know how a country of 360 million people can come up this short. But
it shows the failure of party politics to a large degree.
Well,
I said the other day on our other podcast, I said we weren't going to go here. I said, I tell you right now, I will give you my vow. I will vote for the first party that dumps their current candidate. The first one to do it, they've got my vote.
Yeah, that's why I got real excited about DeSantis, because I saw that as a different choice on our side of the aisle, because I'm all due respect, I'm never going to be a Democrat again, but I'm not satisfied with where my party is or has been for some time now. But nonetheless, I tell my friends around the world that the Constitution is still strong and that our democratic republic can hold if we can have an election, trust the results, and peacefully transfer power. That is fundamental to our way of life. And if we're not exceptional if we can't do that anymore, because we're just rich. Rich is passing. It's in passing. Wealth, You can't take anything with you to heaven, Jeff. That's it. So all of that is just here for today and gone for tomorrow. But the one thing that's made us exceptional is that we're willing to peacefully transfer the most political power in the history of the world without bloodshed, military coup, or conflict. And that's now in question. And so that's why I'm fundamentally involved in that one piece of it, is we have to be able to do that. And people say, oh, but elections aren't perfect. They never have been, but we do them better than anybody else in the world. The elections are not carried out by the people in Washington. They're carried out by your local citizens at the local level, and we do it at 50 different state levels, but we trust the results. And even Al Gore accepted the results in the year 2000. And how close was it, Jeff? Hanging Chads?
A couple of hanging Chads. and somewhere in Volusia County, California, Florida, And no, I'm with you 100%. And just from me, from Jeff Stiles here, don't vilify your local, volunteers at the Election Commission.
No,
don't vilify them because things don't come out the way you want them to. They're not part of some sort of evil cabal, for God's sake.
In fact,
it's just Lurleen from down the road.
In fact, thank them for being courageous to do that, because some of them are under assault now.
I know.
By people who don't think that it went their way. So, you have to learn. Weston told me last week, and this is really, you have to be willing to lose to ever be a decent winner. He said Tom Brady was willing to lose, and he became great. I mean, just think about it. If you're not willing to lose, you should not be in the game.
That's a good place to stop. Don't y'all think that's a good place to stop? I'd say so. Zach, thank you so much for coming in today on Scarred But Smarter. It's been an absolute joy catching up with you.
My pleasure. Love you guys.
Mary Catherine, thank you for getting this whole thing started. Folks out there, do remember, Cadis is there for you, for your family, for your friends, for your neighbors, for this community. Support them as much as possible and continue to spread the word about this podcast. We kind of like it, and we think it can only get bigger and better. One day we'll become global, and then we'll sell Herbalife and Amway, and we'll take over the world.
Scarred But Smarter is presented by Cadis, Council for Alcohol and Drug Abuse Services, Chattanooga's only nonprofit addiction recovery center with a full continuum of care, offering the highest quality of treatment to those struggling with substance abuse disorder, regardless of their ability to pay. Go to cadis.org to learn more about our recovery and aftercare programs, or to make a donation, because every gift is much needed and greatly appreciated. Thank you for letting us be a part of your journey. Find us online at cadis.org.
Ferguson Bath Kitchen and Lighting Gallery, your destination for luxury home products that elevate every room in your house. Whether you're renovating your dream bathroom, designing a gourmet kitchen, or illuminating your living space with style, Ferguson has everything you need to turn your vision into reality. Transform your home into a sanctuary of sophistication with Ferguson Bath Kitchen and Lighting Gallery, where luxury meets inspiration. Ferguson proudly supports Cadis.
If you or someone you know is struggling with alcohol or drug abuse, reach out, seek support. Recovery is within reach. You are not alone, and Cadis will support you or your loved one every step of the way. Please call Cadis today for an assessment, 423-756-7644.